Dr. Ethan Grayson adjusted his collar nervously as the spaceship Endeavour docked with the massive Zereth mothership. The towering vessel shimmered like liquid metal against the darkness of space, a marvel of alien engineering. Ethan, a human xenobiologist, had always dreamed of seeing such technology up close. But this wasn't a research trip. It was a mission to save the fragile peace between humanity and the Zereth Empire. As he stepped into the docking bay, Ethan couldn't help but feel out of place. The human delegation was led by polished diplomats and high-ranking officers. Ethan, with his slightly rumpled lab coat and awkward demeanor, felt like a fish out of water. He wasn't here to negotiate treaties. He was here because of his expertise in alien biology. The Zereth were a proud and mysterious species, part organic, part machine, and notoriously difficult to understand. Dr. Grayson, a voice called, snapping Ethan out of his thoughts. It was Commander Ayla Varin, the leader of the Zereth delegation. She was tall and imposing, her silvery skin reflecting the lights of the ship. Her piercing, glowing blue eyes locked onto Ethan with an intensity that made him freeze in place. "Welcome aboard the Zephyrus," she said, her voice smooth yet commanding. "Your presence is unexpected, but not unwelcome." Ethan swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. "Thank you, Commander. I am honored to assist in any way I can." Ayla's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she turned and gestured for the human delegation to follow. As they walked through the halls of the Zereth ship, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Ayla's attention was focused more on him than the others. The first round of talks began in the Zereth's grand conference room, a space filled with holographic displays and floating orbs of light. The atmosphere was tense, each side cautiously exchanging words. Ethan stayed silent, observing from the sidelines. He noticed Ayla glancing at him occasionally, her expression unreadable. When the session ended, Ayla approached Ethan directly. "Dr. Grayson," she said quietly, "I need to speak with you. Alone." Ethan blinked in surprise. "Me? Why?" Ayla's expression softened slightly, though her tone remained firm. "It is personal. I believe you may be the only one who can help." Before he could protest, she motioned for him to follow. Ethan hesitated but felt compelled to obey. Whatever this was, it was going to be far more than he had signed up for. Ethan followed Commander Ayla through the sleek, glowing corridors of the Zereth ship. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the vessel itself was alive. He couldn't help but admire the alien technology surrounding him, but the tension in the air kept his curiosity in check. Ayla's long strides and silent demeanor only added to his unease. "Commander, I'm just a biologist," Ethan said nervously, breaking the silence. "If this is a medical issue, shouldn't your own team handle it?" Ayla stopped suddenly and turned to face him. Her glowing blue eyes bore into his, and for a moment, Ethan felt like she could see straight through him. "I cannot trust my own team with this," she said. "This is a delicate matter." Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of something behind it. Uncertainty, maybe even vulnerability. Ethan didn't press further, but his mind raced with questions. What could possibly be so sensitive that the commander of the Zereth fleet would ask for a human's help? They arrived at a large door that slid open with a soft hum. Inside was a room that looked like a cross between a laboratory and a meditation chamber. The walls glowed softly and strange. Floating instruments hovered in midair. Ayla gestured for Ethan to enter. He hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The door closed behind them, leaving him alone with the towering alien commander. "I need your expertise, Dr. Grayson," Ayla said, her tone more measured now. She moved to the center of the room and stood with an air of both authority and grace. "I have been experiencing irregularities. My body is not functioning as it should." Ethan furrowed his brow. "Irregularities? Can you be more specific?" Ayla hesitated, a rare crack in her usually unshakable confidence. "There are fluctuations in my biosynthetic systems. Pain, weakness, moments where my neural interface falters. My medical staff has been unable to identify the cause. I need someone with fresh insight. Ethan nodded slowly, piecing things together. The Xerath were a hybrid species, their bodies a seamless fusion of organic matter and advanced technology. A malfunction in that balance could be catastrophic. "All right," Ethan said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "I'll do what I can, but I'll need to run a full scan to understand what's going on." Ayla's gaze softened slightly, and she nodded. "You have my trust, Dr. Grayson. Do not betray it." As Ethan activated the alien diagnostic equipment, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a medical issue. Something far larger was at play, and he was about to step right into the middle of it. Ethan adjusted the floating diagnostic device as it whirred to life, casting a soft glow over Commander Ayla. She stood motionless, her arms crossed, radiating a quiet strength despite the tension in her features. Ethan could see the slight rigidity in her posture, a telltale sign of discomfort she was too proud to acknowledge. The device projected a holographic display of her internal systems. Ethan's breath caught as he stared at the intricate blend of organic tissue and advanced technology that made up her body. Veins pulsing with energy flowed seamlessly into delicate circuits, while strange crystalline structures glimmered near her heart. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen in his studies. "You're remarkable," Ethan muttered, forgetting himself for a moment. Ayla raised an eyebrow. "Focus, Dr. Grayson. Flattery won't solve my problem." Ethan cleared his throat, embarrassed. "Right. Sorry." As he analyzed the data, his eyes narrowed. The readings were strange, irregular fluctuations in her energy flow, but they didn't seem random. The patterns were too deliberate, almost like a signal. "Have you felt this issue worsening recently?" Ethan asked, keeping his tone professional. "Yes," Ayla replied, her voice steady, but laced with frustration. "It began as minor disruptions, momentary lapses in my neural interface. But now it's affecting my strength and focus. This is unacceptable for someone in my position." Ethan hesitated. "Could it be sabotage? A foreign element introduced into your system?" Ayla's eyes darkened, her expression hardening. "The thought has crossed my mind. If someone within my ranks is responsible, they will face severe consequences." Before Ethan could respond, the diagnostic device emitted a sharp beep. The hologram flickered, displaying a pulsating red shape within Ayla's system. Ethan's heart sank. "There's something here," he said, pointing to the projection. "It's embedded near your neural core. I don't recognize it. It's not organic or technological. It's something else entirely." Ayla stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the display. For the first time, a flicker of genuine concern crossed her face. "Can you remove it?" "I don't know yet," Ethan admitted. "I need to study it further. If I make a mistake, it could damage your systems permanently." Ayla straightened, her commanding presence returning. "Do whatever you must, Dr. Grayson. I cannot afford weakness, especially now." Ethan nodded, but unease gnawed at him. Whatever this foreign object was, it didn't belong, and it felt deliberate. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something far more dangerous. Ethan sat in front of the holographic screen, eyes locked on the strange object embedded in Commander Ayla's system. His fingers hovered over the controls as the image flickered in front of him. The object seemed to pulse with its own energy, almost like it was alive. He had never seen anything like it. No human technology, no known alien tech, and certainly not something that should be inside Ayla's body. "Are you sure it's not something you've been exposed to?" Ethan asked, still focused on the screen. "A virus, perhaps? Some sort of parasite?" Ayla shook her head slowly, her expression grim. "I have had no contact with anything outside of my crew and ship. This is not natural. I would know if something had breached my system." Ethan thought for a moment, then pressed a few more buttons. The hologram zoomed in on the object. It looked like a small crystalline shard embedded deep inside her neural core. It was transparent, but there was a faint shimmer of light flowing through it, almost as if it were communicating with something outside of Ayla's body. "I've never seen a structure like this before," Ethan muttered to himself. "This is beyond my understanding. It's like it's designed to be part of you, to interact with your systems." Ayla stepped closer, her eyes narrowing. "Can you remove it, Dr. Grayson?" Ethan hesitated. The crystal-like shard seemed far too embedded to just pull out, but he knew he had to act quickly. If it was affecting Ayla's mind and body, it could only get worse. "I'll try," he said, his voice steady, though his mind raced. "But I can't guarantee anything. This isn't just a matter of pulling it out. I'll need to carefully analyze its structure." Without another word, Ayla sat down in the chair in front of the diagnostic table, her eyes still focused on the screen. She was ready to trust him, perhaps out of desperation, or maybe because she had no other choice. Ethan took a deep breath and started the procedure. His fingers moved over the controls, preparing to break through the biosynthetic barriers around the shard. As he worked, he noticed Ayla's face beginning to tense with strain. Her usual calm demeanor had slipped, revealing the toll this unknown problem had taken on her. "I can't promise this won't hurt," Ethan said, his voice softer now. "I've endured worse," Ayla replied coolly, though her eyes betrayed her nerves. "Just make sure you don't fail." Ethan nodded and began his delicate work. As his hands hovered over her, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that this was not just a malfunction, but a trap waiting to be sprung. Ethan's fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the settings on the diagnostic machine. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his heart raced as he carefully worked to extract the strange crystalline shard from Commander Ayla's neural core. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the equipment and Ayla's shallow breathing. "Stay still, Commander," Ethan said, his voice tight with focus. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. One wrong move, and this could all go horribly wrong. Ayla's gaze never wavered. She watched him with an intensity that unnerved Ethan, but he knew he couldn't let her impatience distract him. The shard was embedded deep, and every time he tried to get closer, a surge of energy pulsed from it, as if warning him to stay away. "This is unlike anything I've ever worked with," Ethan muttered, his mind racing. "It's not just affecting your body. It's blocking my attempts to analyze it properly. There's a force field of some kind around it." Ayla's eyes flickered with frustration, but she didn't interrupt. She had made her choice. She would trust Ethan to fix this. He adjusted the controls again, this time trying to bypass the strange energy field that surrounded the shard. Slowly, carefully, he applied a gentle force. The screen blinked with new readings. Successful. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He was making progress. Suddenly, Ayla gasped. Her back arched slightly as a sharp pain seemed to shoot through her body. Ethan quickly looked up, but she gritted her teeth and gave him a hard, determined stare. "I'm fine," she said, her voice tight. "Continue." Ethan felt a mix of admiration and unease. Ayla was one of the most powerful beings he had ever met, and yet here she was, vulnerable in his hands. He had never seen this side of her before. With renewed determination, Ethan pressed on. The shard was loosening. Inch by inch, the edges of it began to shift under his careful manipulation. He could feel the energy from it building, like a storm on the horizon. "Almost there," Ethan whispered, barely believing it himself. But just as the shard seemed to be free, the entire room shuddered. The lights flickered, and a low, vibrating hum filled the air. Ayla's body stiffened, her muscles tensing as if preparing for something. "What's happening?" Ethan asked, panic creeping into his voice. Ayla's eyes widened. "It's too late. The signal. It's activated." Before Ethan could react, the door to the room slammed open with a loud bang. The door to the room slammed open with a force that rattled the walls. Ethan jumped back, instinctively placing himself between Ayla and the doorway. His heart raced, but his mind was already racing through possibilities. Who or what could be behind this? What was happening? A group of armed soldiers stood in the doorway, their weapons raised. They were not human, but something else, tall, armored, and their eyes glowing with an eerie red light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He had never seen beings like these before. Ayla's eyes narrowed, her posture stiffening in an instant. She looked at the soldiers with cold, unblinking determination, but Ethan could sense the tension in her. Something was wrong. "Commander," one of the soldiers said in a gravelly voice, his gaze fixed on her. "You've been compromised. We're here to take you in." Ayla remained silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Ethan could see her assessing the situation. Then she slowly stood, her energy and composure returning in full force. "They were not supposed to find us," Ayla said quietly, more to herself than to Ethan. But Ethan caught the words, and a chill ran down his spine. Who were these people? What was going on? One of the soldiers raised his weapon, aiming it directly at Ayla. "You've violated the code. You're coming with us." Ethan's mind raced. He had no idea who these soldiers were or why they had come for Ayla, but he knew he couldn't let them take her. Not now, not after everything that had happened. Ayla, however, showed no sign of fear. She straightened, her eyes meeting the soldiers with unflinching resolve. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice cold and commanding. Ethan's hands trembled, but he quickly moved to her side. "What's going on, Commander? Who are they?" Ayla didn't answer right away. Instead, she scanned the room, her mind working at incredible speed. "These are the Narkrath," she said finally, "a faction from my past. They must have tracked the anomaly within my system." Before Ethan could process her words, the Narkrath soldiers took a step forward, their leader's eyes glowing brighter as he sneered. "It's too late for you, Commander. The signal is already out. You've already failed." Ayla's jaw clenched. "I haven't failed. Not yet." Then, with one swift motion, she turned to Ethan. "Get ready," she warned, her voice low and intense. "This isn't over." Ethan didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. The tension in the room thickened as the Narkrath soldiers advanced. Their leader, a tall figure with glowing red eyes, stepped forward, his weapon still aimed at Ayla. Ethan stood frozen, unsure of what to do. He had no weapons, no backup, and he was facing a group of alien soldiers who seemed more than capable of taking both him and Ayla down. But Ayla wasn't afraid. Her eyes locked onto the soldiers with fierce determination. She seemed to have a plan, though Ethan couldn't guess what it was. "We don't want to fight," Ethan said quickly, his voice shaking. "We just need to understand what's going on here." The Narkrath leader didn't respond to Ethan's plea. Instead, he raised his weapon, his lips curling into a sneer. "You should have minded your own business, human. Now you'll pay the price for your curiosity." Ayla's gaze flickered to Ethan for just a second, and in that moment, Ethan saw a flash of something he hadn't noticed before. A fear buried deep inside her. But it was gone in an instant, replaced with the cold resolve he had seen earlier. Before anyone could react, Ayla moved faster than Ethan could follow. She lunged at the Narkrath leader with a fluid motion, her body a blur of strength and agility. Her hand caught the soldier's arm, twisting it with a force that made the leader grunt in pain. The weapon dropped from his hand and clattered to the floor. The remaining soldiers hesitated, surprised by her speed and strength. They clearly hadn't expected the commander to fight back with such fury. In the chaos, Ethan saw his chance. He rushed toward the fallen weapon, grabbing it just as one of the Narkrath soldiers aimed to strike Ayla. With a burst of adrenaline, Ethan fired the weapon, hitting the soldier square in the chest. The soldier crumpled to the ground, lifeless. Ayla turned toward him, her eyes flashing with approval. "Nice shot." Ethan swallowed hard, still trying to process what was happening. He had never been in a situation like this before, but there was no time to think. The remaining soldiers were regrouping, weapons drawn, and Ethan knew they had only moments before the battle would resume. "We need to get out of here," Ayla said, her voice sharp and urgent. "If they're tracking me, we won't be safe for long." "Where do we go?" Ethan asked, breathless. Ayla didn't hesitate. "Follow me. I know a way out, but we'll need to move fast." Without waiting for a response, she turned and sprinted toward the door, with Ethan following closely behind. The Narkrath soldiers quickly regrouped, but they were too late. Ayla had already led him into the shadows, and they disappeared from sight. But even as they ran, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger. The narrow corridors of the alien base seemed endless as Ayla led Ethan through the maze of hallways. She moved swiftly, her footsteps echoing in the silence, her eyes darting around every corner, sensing the presence of more danger. Ethan, though still trying to catch his breath, kept up with her as best as he could, his mind racing with questions. What had just happened? Who were the Narkrath? And why were they after Ayla? They rounded a corner, and Ayla suddenly stopped, holding up her hand for silence. Ethan froze, his senses on alert. He could hear the faint sound of boots on the metal floor, soldiers moving in the distance. The Narkrath soldiers were searching for them. Time was running out. "We need to move faster," Ayla whispered, her voice low but urgent. She pulled him toward a nearby door, her eyes scanning the hallway for any sign of pursuit. "This way. Stay close." Ethan nodded, trying to focus despite the chaos in his mind. Ayla had been calm and in control until now. But as they slipped through the door and into a dimly lit room, he noticed something in her expression, an edge of concern. Something was wrong. "What's going on?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ayla didn't answer immediately. She moved to a console on the far wall, her fingers flying over the controls as she typed in a series of commands. The screen flickered to life, showing a map of the base. She paused, studying the layout carefully, her brow furrowed in concentration. "The Narkrath weren't just tracking me," she said quietly, as if talking to herself. "They're here for something else, something much more dangerous than just me." Ethan stepped closer, confused and concerned. "What do you mean? What are they after?" Ayla's eyes met his, and for the first time, there was an edge of fear in her gaze. "They've come for the technology I've been guarding. A weapon, a power that could destroy entire planets." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "A weapon? You're saying they've been hunting you for a weapon?" Ayla nodded. "Yes, and now that they know where it is, they won't stop until they get it. I was sent to protect it, but now they found me. If they gain control of that weapon—" Her voice trailed off as the gravity of the situation sank in. Ethan could feel the weight of her words. The stakes had just gotten much higher. He glanced at the map on the screen and saw a flashing red dot. The central chamber. That was where the weapon was located. "They'll come for it," Ayla said, her voice steady. "And we have to stop them before it's too late." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then let's stop them." The air in the corridor felt thick with tension as Ayla and Ethan sprinted toward the central chamber. Ayla's movements were quick and calculated, her every step filled with purpose. Ethan stayed close behind, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the weight of their mission pressing down on him. If they didn't act quickly, the Narkrath would reach the weapon first, and nothing good could come of that. They reached a door at the end of the hallway. Ayla stopped just before it, scanning the area for any signs of the enemy. After a tense moment, she nodded to herself and turned the handle. The door slid open silently, and they stepped into the chamber. The room was vast, filled with strange alien technology and glowing blue lights. At the far end of the room, a massive control panel pulsed with energy. Ethan could feel the power radiating from it, a force that seemed to hum in the air around them. "That's it," Ayla said, her voice barely a whisper. "The weapons containment unit is inside the control panel. If they activate it—" She didn't need to finish the sentence. Ethan understood. They had to stop the Narkrath from gaining control of the weapon at all costs. Just as they approached the control panel, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Ayla's eyes widened. "They're here." Ethan quickly scanned the room, looking for anything that might help. His eyes landed on a small alcove filled with weapons. Without thinking, he rushed toward it, grabbing 2 energy pistols and tossing one to Ayla. She caught it with ease, her face a mask of calm determination. "Get ready," she said. Ethan nodded, taking his position near the door. The heavy footsteps grew louder, and then, without warning, the door to the chamber burst open. The Narkrath soldiers flooded into the room, weapons raised. Their leader, the same red-eyed soldier from earlier, stepped forward with a grin that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "This is the end, Commander," the leader sneered. "You can't stop us." Ayla didn't flinch. She raised her pistol, aiming directly at the soldier. "I'm not here to stop you," she said, her voice cold and resolute. "I'm here to finish this." Without another word, she fired. The room erupted into chaos. Ayla's shot hit the Narkrath leader square in the chest, but he didn't go down. Instead, he growled in anger, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Ethan fired his own weapon, narrowly missing another soldier as they scattered, trying to get into position. The battle raged on, but Ethan wasn't about to give up. He couldn't, not when the fate of the galaxy rested on their shoulders. Together, he and Ayla fought with everything they had, determined to keep the weapon out of enemy hands.